Hello, everyone, once again, and a very, very warm welcome to this session on Decoding the Future of Talent, brought to you by PeopleStrong and People Matters Middle East. I'm Aditya Chopra, and I lead the new markets and new initiatives at People Matters. And I have to say this, moderating today's panel feels really special for three reasons. First, the topic couldn't be more timely. Globally, over 70% of organizations now list AI as a strategic priority, yet fewer than 1 in 3 can point to measurable workforce impact. In the GCC, where national agendas and transformation timelines are moving at speed, the question is no longer whether talent strategy needs to change, but how fast and how well organizations can adapt. Second, this session is powered by PeopleStrong, which is customers' choice for talent-focused enterprises across the GCC, not just as a partner, but as a genuine supporter of this large cause, which is advancing HR tech maturity in the Middle East and helping organizations move from fragmented systems to connected, outcome-driven talent decisions. PeopleStrong is GCC's leading talent management SaaS platform. The HR tech company focuses on personalizing talent journeys while enhancing retention and internal mobility using contextualized recommendations driven by AI. Their tech capabilities span across performance management, succession planning, careers and skills, learning, recruitment, and onboarding. And over 500 plus enterprises across Asia and GCC use PeopleStrong to empower 2 million plus employees with their out-of-the-box, fully integrated platform, which operates like a complete talent operating system in itself. PeopleStrong is the #1 ranking HR super app globally across Android and iOS and has recently been voted Customer's Choice of HR Tech in the Gartner's Voice of Customer report for 1,000 plus employees enterprises for 4 consecutive years from 2022 to 25. Thank you, PeopleStrong, and may you continue growing stronger from here. And now the third, we have outstanding panel today. 2 leaders with rare depth, diverse, and real experience at the intersection of strategy, scale, transformation, and execution. It's truly a privilege to host this conversation and gives me great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speakers for today's discussion. Are we ready for the same? Is the screen still frozen? Am I audible? Is everything is fine? If the team can give me a heads up, we can continue. All right, fantastic. Okay, so let me start with Kirsty Kun, Group CHRO of Burjomi. She's a chartered FCIPD HR leader with over 20 years of global experience across varied industries. She's known for helping businesses grow and transform through people. She beautifully blends commercial sharpness with a deeply inclusive, high-impact leadership style. And here's what's really interesting about her. She describes her approach like an albatross, flying high with the big picture view, but diving in fast when it's time to do the real work. She also has been named as the Middle East's most inspirational women in leadership 2025. Kirsty, it's a real privilege to have you join us today, and I'm very much looking forward to your strategic lens on what the future of talent holds. Welcome, Kirsty.
Thanks, Aditya. It's great to be here today. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Kirsty. And next we have Tayfoon Topcourt, Senior Vice President International at PeopleStrong. Tayfoon works with HR leaders across the GCC and beyond, helping organizations navigate HR tech maturity, workforce transformation, and AI adoption. Now, what makes Tayfoon lens powerful is that he sees patterns across organizations where readiness is real, where it's assumed, and where transformation breaks down because the foundation isn't strong enough. He brings the ecosystem and enablement lens, which is critical if we want this conversation to be really practical and not theoretical. Tayfoon, your ecosystem views across the region will add really important dimension to this entire discussion, and we're really excited to have you join us. Welcome.
Thank you, Aditya. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. So, all right, it's time to deep dive and hear these experts But before we dive in, just a quick request to everyone watching. Please don't be a silent spectator today. This isn't Netflix. If any thought hits you, if something triggers the question, or if you disagree with a point, just drop it straight into the chat. Park your questions there as we go, and we'll pick them up in the Q&A towards the end. And if you walk away with a strong takeaway, do share it on LinkedIn. Tag PeopleStrong, People Matters Middle East, and of course our speakers. We would love to keep the conversation going well, even beyond the session is over. So here we go. By 2026, HR in the GCC will be evaluated on intent, innovation, language, or pilot projects. It will be evaluated more on outcomes, measurable productivity, localization depth, workforce agility, and decision velocity. The uncomfortable truth is that many organizations will enter 2026 with modern ambitions, but legacy systems, fragmented data, and talent models which are built for a slower world. So let's start with the most fundamental question. What does ready actually look like in terms of skills, technology, and the people strategy? So Kirsty, let's start with you. With your multi-market experience and exposure to different ownership models, when you look at 2026, what does ready truly look like in terms of skills, tech, and people strategy? Over to you, Kirsty.
Great. I think I've given this quite a bit of thought, and ready for us for 2026 really is not looking at structure or even strategy. I think for me, it's about leadership and leadership maturity. As you mentioned, working across multi-markets and lots of different continents and different industries, I've learned that strategy is really the issue or the problem that stops people from being ready, or organizations. Most organizations have what I call ambition. And the question then for me is, can leadership translate that ambition into a challenge that I think a lot of organizations are facing difficulty in today, which is aligned execution. In the GCC, if we bring it closer to home, we have a lot of complexity, and that complexity is around national agendas and localization. We have geopolitical issues and pressure, and also growing volatility. So if I look at readiness for organizations this year, we're really looking at a leadership mindset that looks at enterprise first, and making decisions for the enterprise versus operating in what we like to call silos or different functional silos. People that are ready to make clear trade-offs between growth and people costs, and I think capability is an important one. And looking at then people cost and productivity, especially now in the HR realm, is ensuring that leaders can have those conversations around succession and visibly linking the people cost, the capability, the productivity, the succession to the P&L. So my journey as a Chief HR Officer really has been focusing the growth on looking at HR excellence from the junior career right up now to being at the C level, is around the enterprise alignment and looking at readiness not being as an HR framework or an HR system, but it's about what you mentioned, decision speed. Are we aligned enough to make decisions faster? Do we have that behavioral coherence that we need in organizations for us all to move in that shared direction? And are we optimizing ourselves for the group versus the business unit or the country? So I think for me, if I have to summarize, ready organizations are ones that for this year are aligned, and they're moving together, and they're not operating in silos or in parallel.
Yeah, That's a beautiful, thing that you mentioned, Kirsty. I think it's about moving together. It's about the overall alignment, not just function wise, not just division wise, at the organizational level. And how do you really align towards the overall objectives, of the organization as well as the nation, meeting the national objectives as well. So that alignment, that behavioral coherence, I think that word that you mentioned really is quite sticky, because that's very, very important, and one of the major obstacle as well, one of the major challenge as well, that organizations really need to overcome. So we'll come to that aspect as well in the in the next section. Tefun, coming to you now, across the GCC ecosystem, what shifts are you seeing in the CHRO priorities? Are leaders really moving from digitization to intelligence, from hiring to capability, from automation to architecture? Do you see some gaps? We would love to hear from you, from the experience that you have, the research that you've been doing. So we would love to hear. Looking forward to hearing from you. Over to you.
Thank you, Aditya. Let me begin with a moment from a recent leadership roundtable in the Gulf. So one of the CHRO was speaking, and she was saying, we're aligned to nationalization, localization. We have invested in the digital HR. But when the CEO asks, are we truly ready? How about the readiness for 26 and beyond? And she said, I still hesitate, not because ambition is missing, but the capability is still catching up with the vision and strategy, which also Kirsty mentioned. And I think that's the real HR story of the GCC as we approach 26. So what I see as top shifts and trends, as you can see also from a recent survey that we have conducted among 300 HR leaders in the region in GCC, the biggest shift is clear. The conversation is moving from jobs to skills for sure. And we see HR leaders more focusing on nationalization and local capability building, as you can see here also. And large-scale reskilling of the existing workforce is another priority. Selective but strategic technology investments still on the agenda, depending on the maturity levels of our customers or organizations. Nearly 7 in 10 leaders, as you can see here, are prioritizing reskilling and local talent pipelines. This shift is really evident in the organizational priorities. So reskilling and upskilling emerges the top response to national agendas, 31.6%, followed by building local talent pipelines and nationalization initiatives by 29.5%. So these two are really point to a clear conclusion. Developing skills at scale is now the most direct path to workforce readiness. And also it gives long-term competitiveness to organizations. But unlike more mature markets, the focus here is not just competitiveness. It's like building the, national, local capabilities, nation building.
Yeah, that's a very interesting slide. I love the way the outcomes have come. And so good to see that the focus actually moving to reskilling and upskilling, and then the localization thing, because that's actually what's happening, in the region. And that is very, very important if we want to make organizations future ready, and definitely the nation and the region really future ready. So focusing on these aspects definitely are very, very important. Thank you so much, Tefun, for sharing this, because, what's interesting in everything, we just heard from both of you, is that readiness doesn't exist in isolation, and it cannot be built in a vacuum. It has to be a combined effort, consolidated effort that actually understands, is based on some research, based on some really strong foundations. And these kind of research actually, really, really help in making the leaders understand what the priorities are, what is the voice of the community, and work towards that. I think that's important. So in the GCC especially, readiness is being shaped not just by the business ambition, but by the national ambition as well. So it becomes even more important. So now let's take a look at a slide from, again, a very interesting research by PeopleStrong. It talks about the top risks on failing to align, with the national mandates. Can we see? All right, we can see the slide. So this slide, basically, if you can see, it highlights the top risk that organizations face when they fail to align with the national mandates, such as the Vision 2030 or the localization strategies. Now, if you take a look at it, the biggest risk which is identified is loss of competitiveness, which is like 32.6% people actually mentioning that, meaning companies that don't align structurally with national priorities risk falling behind in market position and growth. And this is followed by a talent shortage, 27.4%, which is inability to build or access the right local capabilities. Then we have lag in digital transformation, 15.3%, falling behind in tech and modernization. Then we have the regulatory non-compliance, which is exposure to penalties and the operational disruption, around 14.7%. And then the leadership voice, which is the gap in future-ready, locally aligned leadership pipeline, which I feel is extremely important. However, it's just taking 10% of the responses here. So in short, misalignment with the national mandates isn't a compliance issue. It directly impacts competitiveness, capability, and long-term sustainability. Now, which naturally brings us to something even more structural: how Vision 2030, Saudization, Emiratization, and nationalization and broader national priorities are influencing workforce strategy itself. So because in this region, talent strategy is increasingly intertwined with the national strategy. So Kirsty, coming to you first, you've worked across different regions where national priorities influence the workforce dynamics in different ways. So from a strategic CHRO perspective, how should HR leaders balance the national mandates with long-term organizational competitiveness? So how do you avoid reducing localization to compliance and turn it into a sustainable talent advantage? Over to you, Kirsty.
I think Aditya, employment here is not purely commercial. There's definitely the commercial aspect, but it's also developmental. So as an HR leader, we sit at this intersection of automation, localization, and capability building, which is what we saw on the slides earlier. So in my current role, the balance, there's clearly tension. And what we're looking for is productivity improvement in FMCG environments, primarily because the margins are tight. So bringing in automation, obviously reduces roles at some point, but without reskilling the pathways in an environment where culture is high on trust and collaboration, you potentially sit at that intersection of HR of eroding trust and as leaders of an organization. So I think the balance, we have to be deliberate with the balance. What do I mean by deliberate? I mean that we have to use technology, automation, or AI to improve decision-making and decision quality, as well as our workforce planning and analytics. I think those two are key. We then need to look at investing in leadership or in capability and across the GCC, so that we can have these transparent conversations that enable us not to erode this trust and collaboration of the culture. And in parallel is looking at building the reskilling almost into the rhythm of the company, which is tough. I don't have the silver bullet, but it's something that does keep me awake. And that capability development or reskilling is not it's not a reactive program. These are the balances, and we have to be deliberate about them. Because technology it scales efficiency, but leadership are there to sustain what in this environment we need is trust or that legitimacy. So again, I don't have the full answer, but HR is definitely at the intersection of all three. We play a key role in being deliberate about how we address and bring all of those three together.
Yeah, perfectly mentioned. And I think it's definitely about that balance that we strike in terms of, how do we involve a local workforce? So by localization and nationalization, but at the same time ensure that we are globally competitive. So it has to be a beautiful mix, of all the worlds, and for that technology is extremely important. And very correctly mentioned that it's not just about decision making, but it's about making the right decisions, and how technology, how data, how analytics can really help you to take the right decisions and at the right time. So that can really create that kind of a balance. So thank you so much, Kirsty, for sharing that. Tifun, coming to you. So from PeopleStrong ecosystem lens, you see how organizations operationalize the national mandates. Where do you see the most organizations really struggle when aligning Vision 2030 priorities with the national systems and processes? Where do you see the gaps? Where do you see the main struggle happening?
Thank you. It's a great question. National vision, localization, and struggle. So actually, nationalization is strategic and regulatory. It's mandated. At the same time, it's societal. So I see like key tensions. Competitiveness versus localization mandates. So I need to be competitive, but I need to also localize with the scarce, talent sources. And governance roles localize faster than the deep digital skills. The biggest scarcity or struggle I see is in the digital roles in the region, like AI, cybersecurity, engineering. These kind of capabilities remain scarce, and you need to develop a lot of local talent. And on the other side, we see, organizations also struggling. The learnings are not aligned to national capability priorities. So there is a gap also we see. And on the also analytic side, as also Kirsten mentioned, there is limited visibility into the future workforce readiness. So leaders are redesigning the HR I see around skills intelligence, more AI-guided personalized development for nationals, which is becoming very, very important in their skilling journey. And we see internal mobility also over external dependency. A lot of organizations are trying to mobilize the internal resources. But the true localization is about who citizens can become tomorrow. Companies are, of course, struggling to have a fully seamless, integrated talent management system, from skills to performance and succession, where we as PeopleStrong come up and enable this, Aditya.
Yeah, thanks so much, Stefan. Some very, very, important things you raised, you mentioned here, and but my whole thing is that this comes very beautifully in a research. But how aware do you think are the CHROs or the CHRO community about these shortfalls? So, Kirsty, would you like to take this up? How aware do you think the CHRO community in the GCC is that these are some gaps which exist, and this is high time we need to really take it seriously? Do you think that level of awareness and sensitization is there?
Yeah, I think the awareness is there. I think the struggle is with the how. Is,
Yeah.
how do we develop for the future? Are we equipped enough? Are we having the right conversations? Do we have access to the right data to make the right decisions? So the awareness is there for sure. I think we need to bridge the awareness with the solution and create the how. I think that's the big question mark for most leaders.
Agree, absolutely. Tepun, when you have conversations with the CHROs, but how seriously do you feel they take this up? Does this give them sleepless nights, or is it something that, it's a good to work on issue, and, we'll be creating a blueprint or a strategy, or does it really give them sleepless nights? What is your take on this?
Yeah, as I said, the leaders are really struggling on this topic, and they are I wouldn't say sleepless nights, but it's strategically important. I see HR leaders really focusing more on redesigning the skills intelligence. We see a lot of also asks, especially on the skill side, starting from assessment, tying up to the performance, succession, and building those bridges in a seamless way is what we see companies are struggling and trying to address to have a fully seamless integrated process flow.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I think this makes a lot of sense. It's good to see that this is catching up their attention. It's there in their agenda, and they're truly, working on that. And what is really required is that ecosystem approach. It's how the entire, all the stakeholders together can work on it, as a solution, as a blueprint to really address this issue and become truly future ready. So what's really emerging here is that the Vision 2030 is not just a compliance driver, it's a structural reshaping of the workforce strategy. So the real question for HR leaders is not, are we meeting the targets, but are we really building capability that sustains, those targets? So listening to this, one thing becomes very clear. Yeah, national agendas are not just the compliance frameworks, they are reshaping capability, leadership depth, and workforce architecture. And that raises a bigger question here. So, if these structural forces are already changing how we design talent today, what does that mean for the broader future of talent over the next, say, 3 to 5 years? What principles will organizations actually need to live by to remain competitive? So, Kirsty, you've seen how talent models evolve under pressure. When you look at the next 3 to 5 years, what do you believe the future of talent will fundamentally look like, and how are we preparing for it?
So I think how we're preparing for it is we are weaving capability and skills into our strategy. We have recently developed our 5-year strategy. We're in the back end of year 2. And what I've experienced throughout my different roles in the last couple of years is where developing or identifying the skills for the future fails when we've designed them as an HR program. So what we've done differently here is we've sat around the table and we've looked at what are those capabilities or the differentiating capabilities that will make us competitive compared to our competitors. And we've identified 6 for our group. And what we then called that is more of a business discipline around capability. So we all identified them. We all went through the exercise as a leadership team. And we've harmonized that across our markets, and we've communicated those, and we've assessed people against those. So skills has become part of our strategy, or capability has weaved into our strategy. I think what the most important thing from a talent perspective is, or this breakthrough, is when those talent conversations are part of your management business reviews, or they're part of your governance and compliance, your governance meetings. And that's alongside the conversations on revenue, it's alongside the conversations on margin and productivity. So from a workforce planning perspective, we've already tied that into our 3 to 5 year growth strategy. And we know what those capabilities and skill sets are that we need for future. We're looking at the gaps, so our capability gaps, all the way through to board level of our leaders. And we're also ensuring that the accountability is sitting with the business unit heads from a succession perspective. So that's the talent framework that we recently put in place to support skills being weaved into our strategy. And I think, again, the most important piece for me as a senior HR professional is when your CEO or your leaders can actually talk about their top 3 capabilities. And that ownership comes from the top, and they can talk about the risks of those capabilities or of talent. without myself in the room, that's when you've been successful, and we can quantify that commercial impact as well. So I think that's what makes us more successful as HR leaders, is when the business are actually talking about it and quantifying it commercially.
Absolutely. That's a wonderful thing that you try to do in your organization. I think that's what, because the talent agenda should actually become a boardroom agenda. And it is definitely the responsibility of the senior HR leaders like yourself to really bring it to that level with a lot more clarity. Expectations are set right, the targets are set right, and that ownership piece that you spoke about is very, very important. That ownership should not just lie only with the HR team, but it should actually, all the CXOs should actually be talking about that. It has to be, intertwined. It should be there in the business agenda, because talent is the most important asset that you have that can really help you become future ready in case business really wants that. So thank you so much, Kirsty, for sharing this. Typhoon, coming to you again, a very, very interesting thing. Now, from an ecosystem vantage point that you've been trying to build in PeopleStrong, what separates structurally ready organizations from optimistic ones? Is it data maturity, decision velocity, governance clarity? What are you observing across organizations and the region? How do you cut the noise? Which are the organizations that are really ready? Which are the organizations who are just talking about it?
Thank you. That's a great question. We are very optimistic organizations in this region. So optimistic organizations. When I look at, I mean, in general, you see disconnected tools, not integrated. A lot of heavy reporting, but low insight, and we see more intuitive decisions, intuition-driven decisions. When you look at structurally ready organizations, you have the workforce data fully integrated. You have predictive skills and mobility insights, really matching the requirements of the business from a strategy perspective, and more fast and evidence-based decisions. As Kirsty also mentioned, speed is key. So this is structurally ready organizations. In the GCC, decision speed is very strategic, very important. But when we look at the whole market, we see tool-rich organizations, but inside poor HR. So what does it mean? While most stacks seem ready from the outside based on factors like ease of use, extensibility, still there are major gaps in the insights. So and AI capabilities. These systems break when you need real insights, not just data. That data comes, but when you look at real insights, it doesn't come up. So the organizations who are truly ready from a system perspective won't be in a tool-rich inside poor state. So mature organizations, I see, they really focus on extensibility, integration, intelligence, and decision speed, not just how many tools we have, or do we tick the box, yes or no. So as you can see from our research, if we can bring it up, the biggest maturity gaps remain in integrations, analytics, and AI. So this is the biggest gap. The survey participant brought it up, saying that the biggest maturity gap in integrations, analytics, and AI. So, and we as PeopleStrong are really trying to empower organization closing those gaps and be future ready. So this future ready is a big word. It's a very widely used by many leaders organizations. So I'm going to give you a teaser. We are working on a very exciting initiative, extremely exciting, but it's just a teaser from here. It will be the first platform. I'm announcing it. We are working on a future ready .ai platform that brings a wide ecosystem, a really, really wide ecosystem, to help organizations, nations, governments to build the future ready talent, starting from school age till they retire, with a unique talent ID. So we'll share the details, but we are working on something really very exciting, and we're gonna share those details very soon. Hopefully, we'll announce in another webinar together.
Absolutely. This is very, very exciting. And thanks for sharing that, because the region really needs, that clarity. And we as important stakeholder leaders, I feel it becomes our responsibility to really help, others cut through the noise and actually see what does it mean, when you say you are AI ready or you are future ready. I remember very recently I was hosting a roundtable in the UAE, and we were speaking to leaders from United Arab Emirates and talking about the maturity. Now, when we spoke about the maturity in Oman, in Qatar, and other regions, they felt that UAE is extremely mature, and they're doing exceptionally well when it comes to technology integration and usage. But surprisingly, when we did that in the UAE, the results were very different. The good thing was that organizational leaders are aware what maturity really means, and they were very modest, they were very humble, when they mentioned that our maturity is not at the level of 4 on 5, but it's somewhere around 3 to 4. So that really talks about the maturity. But when you do go deeper into that and try to understand what is stopping you from reaching that level, I think that understanding wasn't there at that time. So studies like this and deep research like this can really help them understand what are the real gaps, what are the real challenge areas that they really need to work on. So thanks for bringing it up, Typhoon, and very, very interesting. So if the future of talent really demands agility, capability, velocity, and stronger decision making, there is a very obvious accelerator that we are talking about in the room, which is AI. But here's the real question. Is AI enabling that future or exposing the fact that many organizations aren't structurally ready for it? So if we try to unpack that, Kirsty, coming to you, AI is often framed as a technology shift, but in reality, it is a leadership and governance shift. What will AI fundamentally change in talent management, according to you?
So I think I've lived quite a few implementation challenges, not just selecting the systems side. AI will change for us the quality of decision making, particularly when it comes to people. What will hinder us is our maturity, which is what Typhoon was mentioning earlier on. And it's not maturity of the actual infrastructure or the system, because tech for me is just an infrastructure. AI becomes another piece of tech or infrastructure, some form of infrastructure to enable us to do things faster and better. I think where we struggle is the maturity is our behavior as people, as leaders. We might bring in the tech that will support improving reporting from an AI perspective. But the gap will be if we don't make decisions better, we are not using the AI or the tech in the way that it should be. So I think that's the one. There's a positive, there's a pro and a con there. I think adoption of AI will fail if we don't use the dashboards that we are developing to enable us to make better decisions. So what happens today is we will create a dashboard, or we will have something with data, but we will continue to be anecdotal about it and not use the actual data that's coming from what we built to enable us to make the decision that we need. So I think the digital maturity is what's important from a behavioral perspective. And this comes right from where Typhoon was talking about universities or schools. It comes from developing that at an early stage. So in HR, there are many people across this region that haven't taken the time to understand tech and how that can be an enabler for your role, or for your teams, or for the decision making, whichever role that you're in. Particularly when it comes to workforce analytics, AI will be really supportive there across the organization and the commercials to influence things like investment decisions, hiring freezes, which we are using, across the world at the moment, primarily because of all the geopolitical instability. And it will be used for these capability shifts that we need to identify and make. So I think in summary, the maturity is what changes our behavior, and we're not there yet. And the tech is just an infrastructure. We've been using tech for years and years and years. AI is just a different, form of it. But we need to understand it, and we need to really understand how it can enable us in our jobs or as leaders.
Absolutely. So keeping that keyword maturity, at the core, let's come to Tefun. So Tefun, how is AI fundamentally reshaping the HR tech landscape in the GCC? And are we seeing incremental automation or a structural redesign of HR systems? What does research tell us?
Thank you, Aditya. Great question again. Of course, I mean, AI is very popular these days. And according to the survey, 65% of organizations see AI as the most urgent HR tech priority. We see like two waves. First wave is about automation, and in the automation, it's about CV screening, HR service efficiency, operational speed. On the wave two, it's about structural intelligence, predicting national skill gaps, personalized, developments, and the workforce strategy aligned to vision agendas. This is the second wave I see. But as you can see from the survey, highest impact expected in HR using AI is on talent acquisition, I think 44.7%. So talent acquisition as a process, from skills assessment to, screening, and then interviews, shortlisting, and bringing them into jobs. Learning is 40%. So learning is very critical, especially in the upskilling, reskilling. It's very important, and we see AI coming up in learning with more personalized agenda. Engagement is 39.5%, and these are the main, areas of AI that is expected to impact.
Wow, I in particular love this slide, and what a beautiful question, which was put up. If AI could fix one function for you, what you pick? This really says it all, and I can actually go think of it, just going to a CHRO with these inputs and really say that this is what the research talks about, and some beautiful insights, talking about talent acquisition, which is the core of it, and AI has to
And
really,
exactly,
really support.
we see this trend today. If we
Yes.
look at our customers asking solutions from PeopleStrong, yes,
Yeah.
we have a lot of cases now,
Absolutely.
especially on the talent acquisition. Second one is
Right.
learning and development, but with AI spin more, LXP type of technologies, more personalized, more AI driven. So these are really correlating with what we are doing right now.
Absolutely. No, very, very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing this slide and for taking us through this, because this brings in a lot of clarity what AI can really do in the region. What are the asks of the talent ecosystem, of the talent community? What are the CHROs? How are they looking at AI? And, which are the exact functions they really want to transform using technology? I think this insight is very, very interesting. So thank you so much for sharing. Now, that was a very rich discussion, and clearly AI is not just a technology conversation, it's a governance, capability, and discipline conversation. So before we close, let's strip this down to absolute clarity, and that's exactly what we all are looking for. No frameworks, no long answers. We move to a section which I called as crisp and quick. 2 questions and very crisp answers. And both of you need to answer. So I'll start with Kirsty, you. If you had to pick just one priority that HR leaders in the GCC must get right by the end of 2026, what is it?
For me, it would be the discipline around productivity, aligning people cost, capability, and performance to the commercial reality. That's where HR need to shift to.
Wow, beautifully said. Beautifully said. I'm sure the business leaders would love this answer of yours. No, thank you so much for sharing this. Stefan, what do you think? If you had to pick just one priority that HR leaders in the GCC must get right by the end of 2026, what is it?
I think it's about skill visibility across the nation workforce and leadership and leadership maturity, as also Kirsty said.
Absolutely, I agree, and that's also one of the major outcomes that you have as a part of the research. And for everybody's thing, we'll be sharing the research link shortly, so stay tuned. That brings me to the second question. If you had to assess any organization in 5 minutes, you have 5 minutes and you have to assess an organization, what's the one signal that tells you they are not ready for the next? Kirsty, we can start with you.
That the leaders are not aligned.
Yes. Non-alignment of the leaders. And I think that is exactly what Tepun also mentioned in the previous question. Tepun, what is your take on this?
I totally agree. Leaders not aligned is a big topic, a big signal. And as a subset of this, also skill gap, which I answered in the first question, future skill gaps, if you cannot predict also, it's a big challenge.
I agree, and that's exactly what the research also
which is related with the strategy and leadership. So if the strategy and the leadership aligns well, then you will, of course, predict the required skills for the future.
Absolutely, well noted, and I think this is very, very important. It all comes down to the leadership, their understanding of what this talent ecosystem can really do in driving business success. I think that alignment is extremely important. Once that alignment happens, I think everything will fall in place, be it skill gap analysis. We all know about it, but how do organizations really work around it is very, very important. So thanks for sharing, both of you. Now, before we wrap, I would love to open this up for a few questions from the audience. We've covered a lot of ground: readiness for 2026, the impact of the national agendas, the evolving principles of talent, and how AI is reshaping not just HR tech, but HR judgment itself. So if you have any questions, practical, strategic, or even slightly provocative, please drop it in the chat now. We'll take a few and bring the panel back in. Do we have any questions? All right, we have the first question here. Is HR at risk of becoming irrelevant if it doesn't become data-driven, or will the human side always protect its role? Wow, I love this question. Who wants to take this up? Kirsty, would you like to?
Yeah, I think the question answers itself. I think the human side will always protect the role of HR. I think HR is more relevant now than ever, actually. And the requirement of HR is more relevant now more than ever. I think HR just needs to become a lot more skilled when it comes to joining the commercial and the people, more influential, and certainly be at the forefront of the changes in technology to enable the organization to move faster. So it's entirely up to the HR and the professional and the ambition of the person, I believe. Yep.
Beautifully articulated. Thank you so much, Stefan. Any comments on this?
I agree with Kirsty. The question answers itself, yes.
Exactly. And beautifully mentioned. No, thank you so much. Now we have the second question. What breaks first when an organization scales AI without fixing integration? Tipun, let's start with you first this
I
time.
think I think what breaks first the decision coherence, not the technology itself, because you will have fragmented truth. Different teams will deploy separate AI tools on maybe different data sets, different assumptions, different definitions of success. So there will be multiple answers to the same question, and I think it will impact the decision coherence significantly.
Yeah, very true, very true. Kirsty, I'll come to you with the next question. In fact, that's quite interesting. If skills are the new currency, what is the most flawed assumption we still hold about skills measurement?
Wow. The most flawed assumption we still hold about measuring skills. I think it's about the subjectivity of people in making assumptions about skills and how we measure skills through subjectivity. I think there's an element of objectivity, but there is still an element of judgment that needs to be put in place. And also deciding on someone's skills and skill assessment without the individual being present.
Yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. And I feel just adding on to this, what you mentioned, I think another flawed assumption is that skill possession equals skills application, So just because someone has been trained or assessed on a skill doesn't mean they can actually deploy it effectively under real business pressure. So I think that understanding and maturity is also extremely important here. Now, very quickly, just last question. If our HR data is not clean today, should we still start with AI or pause until the foundation is fixed?
I'm a big believer in garbage in, garbage out. So make sure your data is clean. It always has to be clean. So that's my philosophy. That might be old school.
Yeah. No.
But you will continue to have unclean data. Doesn't matter what tech you put in or AI or changes. So make sure that you're putting your data is clean. Yeah.
Absolutely answers that. Tipul, what's your take on this?
Yes, I agree. Data needs to be fixed, but more importantly, I think organizations can start looking at enabling their teams, raising awareness, coming up, what kind of AI use cases can help them in terms of the biggest impact. So preparation readiness can continue in parallel. And we are helping organizations. We have a AI readiness assessment and workshop, very focused on HR organizations. So we're doing this with our customers.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, both of you, for being so honest, for sharing your very interesting perspectives. And this has been really an incredibly rich conversation. So if I were to summarize, what we've heard today in one line, it would be this, that 2026 will not reward HR for ambition alone. It will reward HR for its readiness. So the future of talent belongs to organizations that really combine the national alignment, human capability, and system maturity with leadership judgment at the center. And I think that becomes the crux of all the discussion that we had. That becomes the core center. So I would urge you all to download a copy of the research by PeopleStrong. Should you be interested in knowing more, about the gaps, about the challenges, about the opportunities, about the priorities of the CHROs. Here is the QR code that you may scan and then download. So I give you 10 seconds to do that, to download. Believe me, it's very, very interesting. You will love, when you go through this report. I think some beautiful insights are captured in this already based on the research, based on the inputs that the HR community itself has given. And the link to download is also given there. So do download this and take a look at it and apply the learnings as much as possible. So on that note, I want to sincerely thank our panelists, Kirsty and Tefon, for bringing not just your expertise, but genuinely and honestly your thoughtful perspectives. Thank you for elevating the conversation beyond, just the buzzwords and into real decisions CHROs are facing today, the real problems, challenges, and what lies ahead. And thanks to PeopleStrong for powering this discussion, and to everyone who joined us for your time, attention, and engagement. And we look forward to continuing this conversation, and more importantly, supporting you as you prepare for the rest of 2026 with clarity and lots and loads of confidence. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Aditya, for your great moderation.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
We are on time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.